Her cat had come close to some messy scrapes a few times with the not-so-friendly raccoons that inhabited the forest, and she had learned over the years to keep her head down, so to speak, and slink her way around, keeping low to the ground. Occasionally she would visit her strange neighbors closest to them, the Hewitts, and peek through their windows, even though she knew it wasn't the polite thing to do. And she saw some rather mysterious things within. Sam heard the hall clock strike 12. She rose and stretched her front paws out in front of her. Soon it would be too late to go out, and she really was in the mood for a long walk. She stepped quietly from her bedroom, looking both ways down the hallway with her lamp-like eyes, before making her way down the stairs and to the back door. A thin line of light reflected from the full moon, and it jetted across the freshly clean linoleum kitchen floor, indicating that the door was still slightly ajar. She couldn't wait to get out into the night air, so much cooler and fresher than during the sultry days, and she inched her nose into the crack, causing the door to open enough for her to squeeze through. A light breeze washed over her face, causing her to close her eyes and take a deep breath in. She was always amazed at how keen her senses became upon becoming a cat. Her ears would prick at the slightest noise, and her vision was acutely better in the dark as a feline than as a girl. Not to mention the fact that she could cover much greater distances running with all fours than just the usual two. She ran fast now, passing the garden and the rusty tractor, making her way through the open grass that led to the forest beyond. Then, a half a mile or so away, she could make out the narrow dirt path that was really on the Hewitts' property next door, and led directly to their house. She thought that she might have another look in the windows if anyone was awake, which they usually were, even at this hour. As she entered the forest, she became aware of the many sounds that always seemed to disappear with the sunrise, the owls hooting from up above, and the scurrying of tiny feet running away from her. She never had the desire to chase anything like a true cat would, but she was curious to see what creatures lived deep in the clutter of trees and moss. Soon she could see the house in the distance, and she hastened to the forest edge. Howard and Hazel Hewitt were a young couple, well, younger than her parents, and had lived next door for as long as Sam could remember. Her mother had told her that the large house had been left abandoned for years and years, had begun to look more like a rotting garbage heap than a house until Howard and Hazel had moved in some odd 10 or 12 years ago. Sam liked the Hewitts, and had become increasingly fond of Hazel, who was sweet and funny and somehow different from other grown-ups. She was a tall, pretty lady with a small button nose and light brown hair that hung down her back in soft, flowing waves. Mr. Hewitt, Howard, was also very nice, though not one for talking much. He seemed older than Hazel, though his short salt-and-pepper hair may have been premature. Sam felt as close to Hazel as she would a sister, and they had spent many hours talking over freshly made cookies about school and boys and many other important subjects. She recalled one special conversation not too long ago when she was feeling a little too ordinary, and Hazel had told her that everyone had their own special gifts in life, and that soon Sam would realize her own. At that moment, Sam had desperately wanted to confide in Hazel about herself, about her unusual ability to become a cat. But she had thought better of it, unsure how the subject might come off. But better than the daytime visits, Sam really enjoyed prowling over to the Hewitts' house at nighttime. There was always something peculiar to see, something not quite right, like household objects seemingly floating in midair around the kitchen, or food cooking itself on the stove. It all seemed strange to Sam, though not scary. After all, she could turn into a cat, and who knew what other kinds of magic there were in the world. Low to the ground, Sam crept up to the brightly lit house, but stopped suddenly a yard or so from the back porch, just as the screen door slid quickly open and a large black and white speckled flop-eared dog came bounding out. Great, thought Sam, edging her way back down the dirt path and into the fringe of the forest. Bumper. Bumper was the Hewitts' family pet, and although Sam loved to play ball with him during the day, he was a nuisance at night. She sat quietly and watched, hoping that the large lumbering beast wouldn't catch a whiff of cat and come tearing out after her. "Okay, dear," said the soft voice of Hazel as she bent down over the great beast and hooked a thick leash to its collar. "Let's have our walk." Hazel patted the dog's head affectionately, then knelt down and cupped its sloppy face in her hands. Sam cringed as she saw Hazel give the dog's slobbering lips a full kiss and then giggle slightly. The dog barked loudly in return, and they were off down the front path toward the road. "Ew," hissed Sam, though the sound came out more like mew. She watched the pair walk up the road and out of her vision, and then she decided to have a quick look into the kitchen through the back door. Nothing, thought Sam, as everything appeared to be in order. No floating objects or a trace of food out. She often wondered if it were just her very vivid imagination playing tricks on her, as it did most of the time. She decided to stretch out on the back porch for a few minutes to enjoy the summer breeze before returning home to bed. The night air washed over her sleek fur, and she rolled over onto her back, stretching out her paws as far as she could. The dim leaves of the tall oaks high up rustled with the night, and all around her she felt a great sense of peace. Sam lay on the porch for some time, taking in the night, when suddenly she heard the footsteps of someone or something approaching. She scrambled to her feet and ran for the forest, stopping just at the edge and turning to see who had disturbed her catnap, her heart pounding. It was Bumper, and she watched as he lumbered along alone up the back porch, his leash dragging behind him, and sat at attention facing the back screen door as if waiting for it to be opened. Sure enough, very slowly, as if by magic, the door slid open. The dog walked through it, wagging his tail, and disappeared as the door closed just as magically behind him. Strange, thought Sam. But she was now too tired to think much about it, and she turned and headed home with a slow trot in her step. It was such a beautiful night, with the bright stars twinkling overhead and the moon full and luminous, and a part of her wanted to spend the night outside. Still, she knew better. If she overslept and her mother and father found her missing, they would be panic-stricken for sure, and she was pretty sure that they would never want her out late at night, even if she were able to turn into an elephant or even a mountain lion. She often felt guilty for her late-night strolls, but not guilty enough to give them up. Some days she knew that she would have to tell her parents about her secret, and she hoped that they would understand. Maybe they already knew and were just waiting for her to tell them. That could be possible. Maybe it wasn't such a big deal. These thoughts were racing through her head as the form of her house appeared in the distance. It looked dark and tranquil. The dim glow of the twinkling stars overhead and the running brook could be heard far away in the distance. Sam sighed. She loved her home, and the farm and the running brook, and she thought that she would never want to leave. She walked slowly through the back lawn, now cooled by the night, and wandered around to the back where the door still stood slightly ajar. Something was different. What was it? Sam sat hesitating to enter back into the house, wondering what it was that had her so confused. Then she realized that there was a light on in the kitchen. Not bright light, as it often appeared when the fixture above the smallish kitchen table was on, but a soft light, like when the small bulb attached to the oven was turned on. And Sam thought hard, trying to remember if she had